Hey everyone, today we're going to learn an interesting concept in Python called using a while loop with lists. So using while loops with lists and dictionaries, but in our scenario we're going to be implementing this practice using lists. It allows us to collect, store, and organize lots of input to examine and report on later. So it's a very useful concept. So we shall begin by learning this today. The scenario is what we would like to do is we're a burger shop and we have a couple of burgers that came in. And what we want to do is we want to loop through the list of burgers, and we're going to give this list variable called burger orders. Then what we want to do is print a message for each order. And as each burger is made, we need to move it to the list of finished burgers, which is another variable. Then we want to print a message listing all the burgers that we made. So the first thing that we want to do is basically start off with a list of burgers that came in. So we're going to give this a meaningful variable, burger orders. And that's the syntax of a list. And we're going to start filling it in with what our customers had asked for. So let's say they asked for the CEO burger. And we had another customer order ultimate cheeseburger. That's the second order. The third order is, let's say, burger fi. And let's say we had another, another order come in. Barbecue, rodeo. So these are the different orders that came in that the user had requested from our shop. I'm just going to fix this for us. And then the next thing that we want to do actually is, after we have the orders that come in, we need to create an empty list. And essentially what the empty list is going to do is it's going to hold all the finished orders as we go through them. So this one is going to be called finished burgers equals an empty list. Okay, so we begin with a list of burger orders, and then we have an empty list. Now the next thing that we want to do is start by looping through the orders that we have. And the way we do that is we use the keyword called while. So while burger orders, which is the name of our list. And what's nice about a while loop is the while loop runs as long as the list of burger orders is not empty. So as long as it's not empty, it's going to continue to loop through. So now as it loops through, what do we want it to do? The next thing that we want it to do is we need to start removing each item as we are actually completing these orders. So let's say the customer orders this in, and then we had one of the employees actually pick up that order and they're going to complete it. So how do we actually start removing those items? So the way we do that is we start off with the list of items that we have, and we use a function called pop function. So what this is doing is like, hey, as I'm going through the list, we're telling Python to actually remove the item from the list. Now as it removes it, we actually need to store this in a variable because we want to do something with it. Completed. And I'm going to store it in a variable called completed, because as we actually perform an action on this and we implement a function, and the pop function by default will remove the last element of the list. So the last element of the list will be the first to be removed, and we stored in a variable called completed. That variable can be anything we want, but for our case, I'm just going to keep it simple. Now, once we actually removed the element from our list, we want to print to the user. So the employee picks up this order. We remove it from our list. We store it into a variable. We now need to print and let the user know. I'm going to use a F string, and we're going to say, I finished your, and then whatever the burger name. So we're going to pass this variable. Well, we don't need to use this function. Whoops, let me correct my spelling. Completed. We're going to pass the variable completed into our string. That way it prints out each element that it goes through. So once it actually goes through and removes each order, right? The employee picks up this order, then it stores it in this variable, then we pass it into a string, we'll let the customer know. Then another employee picks up this order that came in, and we use the pop method by removing this and storing it in this variable and then passing it in as within our F string. That way it prints out a useful message to the user. And the while loop, like mentioned prior or earlier, it runs as long as the list of burger orders is not empty. So now what do we do after we've removed every item and we've actually stored it in this variable? We now want to move it to the list of finished burgers. We want to move the list of burgers into the orders that came in into this finished burgers list. And the way we do that is we start off by finished burgers, because that's the list, that's the empty one. And the function that we use that is extremely useful in Python is the dot operator, append. And we need to append the completed variable, right? The completed variable, because it's actually storing every element in our burger list. It's stored it in this variable. So we're going to now append it. And what this does is it's saying, hey Python, can you please take every element that you have stored in this variable and append it to the finished burgers list. So, and this is why we started off with an empty list, because we're going to eventually move these over to our finished burgers because we're completing each order one by one. So the next thing we want to do is, now that we've actually moved the list to the finished burgers by using the append function, right? And the append function or method in Python is a predefined method, and it's used to add a single item to a certain collection type. So it's adding a single item. So it's going to add all of these items to this variable, which we've assigned to an empty list. So the next thing we want to do is we want to print a message listing each burger that was made. So the way we do that is, I'm going to do a new line, list of burgers completed. This is just a print statement, that way we can separate. I'm going to put this on a new line just to make it easier as well. Now to access each element, we need a for loop. So for burger in finished burgers, right? And then we're going to print burger. And what this is going to do is it's going to take every element and store that into this variable, and then we're going to pass this variable into a print function, and then it's going to print the statement for us. So let's see what that looks like. As you can see here, it first starts off with I finished your barbecue rodeo burger, and then list of burgers completed. We only finished one. Then the next employee finishes making the BurgerFi for the customer, and then it lists the 2 burgers being complete. Then it moves on to the next thing in the list using the pop method, ultimate cheeseburger. Then it's going to add it to the list. We have 3 completed. Then it's going to go on and finish the last burger, the CEO, and then give us a list of every item. Another way we can do this, let's go into our Vi editor. Another way we can do this, click I to insert, is take this out of the the while loop. Take this out of the while loop. And what this is going to do is it will actually print every burger that it's completed, and then after it's completed every burger, then it will give us the list. So let's see what that looks like. And as you can see here, it will let us know I finished this burger, barbecue rodeo, I finished your BurgerFi burger, I finished your ultimate cheeseburger, I finished the CEO burger, and then it gives us a list of all the burgers that were complete. So let's review the code real quick. So what we learned today is using while loop with a list. And what's nice is that using while loops with a list and dictionaries actually, but in this scenario we only used lists. It just allows us to collect, store, and organize lots of inputs to examine and report on later. So in this scenario, we were a burger place and we had a couple orders come in that we stored into a list. And we used the assignment operator and we assigned it to a variable called burger orders. Next, we actually needed to create a new list called finished burgers, but we left it empty because what we wanted to do is as we fulfill each order, we're going to then move it into our finished order list. And the way we did that is by using the while loop. And the while loop runs as long as the list of burger orders is not empty. And within the loop, the pop method removes orders one at a time from the end of our list. So that's what the pop method does. And the way we do that is we just take the variable of our list, the list name, right? Burger orders. And then we use the dot operator and we use the pop function, which will remove the last element of the list. And then after we actually perform an action or something with it, we need to store it in a variable. That way we know what Python needs to know, like, what do you want me to do with it? Okay, I'll remove every item, but then what? So that's why we have to use the assignment operator and store it into a variable. After that, we just used a print statement here, print function. That way we're able to print something useful to the user, and we use the f string \n for a new line, and we just passed the completed variable into here, because as it actually used the pop function is as it removed barbecue rodeo, it then stored it into completed, and then it prints. Then we use the pop function again on BurgerFi. We stored into completed variable, and then we printed out the statement. And then it keeps going as long as the list is not empty. After it's gone through the while loop, what we needed to do is, the next part was, we needed to move it to the list of finished burgers. Okay, so now as we've gone through the while loop and we actually finished every burger in our list, we needed to move it over to our finished burger list. And the way we do that is we use the dot operator append function, which is extremely useful in Python. And the append method in Python, it's a predefined method used to add a single item to a certain collection type. So what it does is we told Python like, hey, can you please take all the elements that you've stored in completed variable here, and I need you to append that to our new list called finished burgers. The next thing we wanted to do is just to print a message listing each burger that was made. And the way we did that is I just created a print statement, a list of burgers completed. And the way we iterate through, we use a for loop. It's very simple. For, keyword, this is a variable that's human defined, in, keyword, finished burgers, which is the variable that we've defined here. And then we just use a print statement and we pass that variable in. That way it prints out the list of burgers that were completed. And that's essentially how we use a while loop with a list.